I want to take a trip down memory lane this morning, and where I want to go is I want to go back to Google searches 1 year ago. So I want to go to the top 3 Google searches from 1 year ago, 2019. Do you remember 2019? In 19, we were looking forward to 2020 because it was going to be a new decade. It was going to be exciting. And here's what we were looking at in 2019 in April. The number 1 search thing was How to Train a Dragon 3. The next biggest search thing on Google was how to take a screenshot on your cell phone. And the third highest search thing in that week of April was how to tie a tie. So now we're going to fast forward. We're coming back to where we are right now, and Google looks like this. The search engines look like this. They look like number 1 thing searched right now is how to make a mask. Number 2, how to make hand sanitizer. And then the third thing that is most researched right now is how to boil eggs. So we went from 2019 about looking to this movie, How to Train a Dragon 3, to self-preservation where we are in 2020. Big changes. I want to talk to you about masks though today. The title of our message is Unmasking Ourselves. And what does that look like? What are we talking about? Are we supposed to get rid of our masks? We're not exactly talking about those masks today, but I do want to talk about those masks first. How many of you have worn a mask in the last 3 weeks? Go ahead and raise your hand so people around you can see. If you've been to the grocery store, if you have been to the doctor's office, chances are you're familiar with a mask. Why did you wear that mask? Because I was told to. Maybe your answer. Or because of protection. We wear masks for 2 main reasons. The first one is protection, and the second one is concealment. There are other reasons too, but those are the 2 that I want to talk about a little bit today. You see, one of the side effects of wearing a mask is people don't see enough of your face to read it. If you've been out in a grocery store, you know this. It's almost like there's a flat effect where you can't see people just even mingling around. You can't see what's on their face. We're almost like we're expressionless. And a mask does that. So I want to go from the mask that we wear for protection and concealment to the mask that we wear as a person. Unlike those masks that we wear in society, many of us wear these masks, they're like a false front. They're a false you that we portray to others for all different reasons. But these masks are not visible as the ones that we are seeing right now in grocery stores, doctor's offices, online. They're not visible. You can look at me and you can't see that I have a mask on. Really, I know if I have a mask on, and not many people do. These masks, the only way you can tell is by the actions or the reactions that these masks portray, the message that they put out. We're not born with these masks. These masks hide us or portray us different than we really are on the inside. It's an internal task or an internal event that has an external effect. The dilemma with masks is they're not the real you. What you may be seeing through a mask is not the real person. They are not the you that you are made to be. And that may be because of hurt, because of pain, because of failure, because of ulterior motives. There's all different reasons why we put masks on, we leave masks on. But remember that just because you have a mask on doesn't mean that it doesn't affect people that are around you. It affects relationships in big ways. And it affects the relationship between ourselves, others, and God. And I want to talk about those things briefly today. When it affects ourselves, when we mask ourselves, we convince ourselves of a life other than what's God's best for us. We think that we need to act this way to be in this relationship. We need to act this way to come to church. Or maybe we need to do this in order to be accepted by certain people. The masks that we wear, they're not pleasing to God. And sometimes we have a mask in ourselves. We do that in order to kind of cover up what we might be trying to hide from God within ourselves that we know. Now, sometimes we wear a mask in front of other people as well. And when we do that, a lot of times we're worried that if we don't wear that mask, they're gonna find out that I'm really not as smart, as good at my job as you think I am. Or maybe I'm not as a nice of a person as you think I am. But really, when we're wearing the mask to others, we're just not being honest. And with that becomes this extra work carrying around this baggage of trying to please other people and try to show them a side of us that might not be the real us. And then sometimes we wear that mask to God. And sometimes when we wear that mask in front of God, it's because we are not comfortable letting God in, where we've accepted him to a certain point of our life, but we're not gonna let him take any steps where he can come in further. And how I picture that is that mask in ourselves, we might have this like a little box inside of ourselves that we really don't want God to get to. Because if you open that box up, there's things like shame and fear and addictions and my money. Things that I don't really think that God needs to be a part of yet. So I'm gonna keep God kind of at arm's length. Masks keep us from being honest and open. They keep us from being real, and they hinder us from being image bearers of God, which is our place in this world. Mask excuses sound like this. They sound like, they will like me if I do this. Or they will like me if I act like this. Or this is who I am. I have to be this way so that they will approve of me. Oscar Wilde says it like this. He says, be yourself. Everyone else is already taken. But the psalmist writes it like this in Psalm 139:14, and I love this. It says, I praise you because I am fearfully and wonderfully made. Your works are wonderful. I know that full well. In the book of Mark, Jesus is talking about the religious leaders. And the religious leaders of the Old Testament, and they came into the New Testament, they had a tendency to act a certain way outside to show people that they were a certain way, and they didn't always take that to heart. And this is the story in Mark 12. It says in verse 38, it says, as he taught, Jesus said, watch out for the teachers of the law. Keep an eye on the teachers of the law. They like to is the next verse. I want you to underline that. Draw like a mask on it or something, but they like to. They like to walk around in flowing robes and be greeted with respect in the marketplace and have the most important seats in the synagogue and the places of honor at banquets. They devour widows' houses and for a show make lengthy prayers. These men will be punished most severely. There's this show going on. The show that they're putting forth, it's a mask. And they were doing that because the religious leaders were not concerned so much about their relationship to God, listen to this, as what people thought their relationship to God looked like. They were more concerned about how I looked and my relationship to God looked than really what was going on between them and God. You see, they were wearing a mask, and it was a false idea. It was a false front of who they really were. Those false fronts that they were wearing, they benefited their pride, their egos, their pocketbooks. And masks give off a perception that is not always true. In many cases, it is not. But if we are honest, if I'm honest and you're honest, and we take time and we just do some self-examination and look at ourselves and say, am I wearing a mask? Am I real to those people in my circle? Am I real to people that I come into contact with? And if you're not, then maybe we have to look inside and say, why am I not real, and what do I need to fix so that I can be real? Because I don't think that the religious leaders were crazy odd. I think mask wearing is quite common. I think that a lot of times we'll show a different side of us, maybe a better side of us than the real picture, so that we're accepted or that we don't get harassed or we don't get picked on. Masks are when we're trying to be something that we're not. Dave Ramsey says this about the Joneses. He said, quit trying to be like the Joneses. They're broke. He's talking about money. Because, what happens a lot of times is we want what our neighbors have. And as we've researched that, we realize that about 78% of them are living paycheck to paycheck. So he says, don't pretend to be like them because they're just pretending. When we wear masks, we pretend to be something that we're not. And when we do that, the real us dies a little bit every day, a little bit more and a little bit more. The poet E.E. Cummings wrote this. He said, the greatest battle we face as humans is the battle to protect ourselves from the self the world wants us to become. The greatest battle we face as humans is the battle to protect ourselves from the battle the world wants us to become. The world is pulling us in a direction, and sometimes it wants us to look a certain way. However, in Mark, Jesus was basically pushing towards this point that we are to be image bearers of Christ, meaning that we need to be honest, we need to be loving, we need to be sacrificial. John 15:13, Jesus said this, and it's written in there. It says, greater love has no one than this, to lay down one's life for his friends. To put it simply, if we are going to give ourselves to others, we must have a life to give. Not a fake life, not a false mask that we put on, but a real life. If we're living behind a mask, we don't have a real life. We have a perception of a life, but in the end, our life is kind of just a bunch of lies together, and it's doing things with wrong motives. You see, if you're a believer and you've accepted Christ in your heart, you are a new creation. And we need to walk in those new creation realities. We need to be walking in the Spirit and not masking like we're old covenant believers, but we're new creations, and we need to take steps in that direction. Sometimes we wear a mask that we pretend to be maybe more spiritual, or we try to take someone else's gift because that gift might look a little more fun than my gift. My gift might be serving, and I want the gift of prophecy, or I want the gift of tongues, or I want the gift of leadership. But my gift, I'm really good at serving, but I want to try to put that mask on it. I want to try to do that. Romans 12:6 talks about that. And in Romans, it says this. It says, we have different gifts according to the grace given to each of us. You have a spiritual gift. I know that you have a gift. Use your gift. Don't use my gifting. You do you, and I'll do me. And we do our spiritual gifts together. And that's how we bear the image of Christ to the world. And that's how we minister to the world together. If we use the superhero example, let's go with Marvel. Let's say that there is the Hulk, there's Iron Man and Spider-Man. So we have those three superheroes. And they all have their own talents and abilities and giftings. And we saw that in the Marvel universe, that each of their different gifts did different things to each time save the world, right? What if the Hulk tried to be Spider-Man? Or what if Spider-Man tried to do what the Hulk could do? Now, of course, this could cause a lot of debates, I understand that, but it didn't really work. When we saw that the Hulk tried to be Iron Man, he wasn't as effective as Tony Stark was as Iron Man. It's the same way in the body of Christ. We all have our gifts, and we need to move in our gifts. We need to get rid of those masks, those perceptions of who we are not, and take steps into who we are. We need to have that real relationship with Christ, that real relationship with people. In the last decade, Gallup has been doing surveys that have swept through America, and they have been looking through this topic of what should you focus on. And they keep coming up with the same answer. Focus on your strengths, our giftings, and our talents. Instead of pursuing who we are not, we need to pursue who we are. Because the more you chase something you're not, the more you're just wasting your time. If we transition this to our relationship to God, when we are saved, we are children of God. We need to take off a mask that might act differently. We don't want to be a hypocrite. We want to be a child of God. Can we take the mask of our old self off and walk in the new creation reality, and be an example of Him and demonstrate to people who God really is? Or are we content living behind the mask? Depending on which person we're seeing, which group of people we're with, we might be throwing up different masks to please different people. But we need to remove our masks for lots of reasons. But we need to be real with ourselves. We need to be real with others. And we need to be real with God. Even Jesus did this with his disciples. At one point he said, "Who do you think that I am? Talk to me. Let's talk about this." It's okay to talk about things. You might not have all the answers of what your life should look like, but you should be living your life and not someone else's life, or not trying to live in a vein that is not what God has for you. When we remove our masks, 3 things happen. And there's more than 3, but 3 that I want to point out. The first thing is you live to your potential. Your uniqueness, your calling, your giftings, they're let out, freeing you to be who God called you to be used by God. You will use your gifts and you flourish. I'm amazed at what happens when you are in your giftings, when you are flowing with where you want to be. It is like everything is working together. When you're wearing a mask, it's a lot more work. But when you are using your giftings, the gifts of the Spirit that you're given, then you are in sync with the Spirit and you are in stride with the Spirit. Second thing that happens is there's relief, because masking and pretending and lying, they're all exhausting. They are. Keeping up all those false pretenses, those false behaviors, it's just taxing on us. So there's relief. And the third thing that happens is there's healing. When we remove our masks, we become honest. And honesty helps us to heal. Remember that. Honesty helps us to heal, but hiding hinders healing. Remember that, church. Hiding hinders healing. So when we remove those masks, and you need to do some self-reflection later, but when we remove the mask, we live life to our potential. We get a relief because we're not juggling all those masks, and then we start to heal, and then we start to move forward in God and be the image bearers of Christ, which we are made to be. Masks make us shallow. What God has intended to be deep, they keep people, relationships and God at arm's length. They push them away. Everything in our lives gets cheated when we choose to live behind a mask. But as we walk through grocery stores in the next few weeks, and maybe if malls open up, or if you're at a doctor's office and you see someone in a mask, let that be a reminder to you that to unmask yourself and let yourself out. Be who God created you to be. You see, guys, God can use your realness, your authenticity, your failures, and your struggles to reach other people. Because if Christianity is anything, it is hope. And if you have everything perfect in your life, do you need hope? It's okay to be real. It's okay to struggle. My challenge is you to do some self-reflection. Unmask with me. Be blessed, church. Onward.